This is part 23 of my series on my N-gauge model railway project. Previous parts covered the project from its inception through the creation of the baseboard, selection and laying of track, building of scenic items, obtaining rolling stock, etc. The project is ongoing. Recent parts have also featured actual video of running on the layout and more to come, some later in this episode. This part deals with a bunch of Graham Farish Collectors Club wagons that I bought, some problems that I had with them, and some modifications I did to improve matters, followed by quite a bit of running on the layout. Here you can see the 12 wagons as they came in their boxes. These were bought on eBay UK to replace an earlier group of 15 similar wagons that were sadly stolen from my porch after the courier dropped them off and before I could take them in, which has meant I've had to be on constant vigilance for thieves since. Most unpleasant. Anyway, this is a group of mostly a variety of private owner wagons for the most part. Mainly open wagons, some with coke rails. The wagon at centre right here is a Northeastern wagon for Loco sand, the sand used to load the locomotive sanders, which are used to put sand under the wheels to increase traction when needed. That one actually proved to be particularly problematic. Here are the other 6. Again, the only one that's not an open wagon is the one at centre right, which is a flat tank wagon marked R.S. Clare and Company Limited, Liverpool. That one also gave me a little bit of trouble. So here are some pictures of my initial attempts at running these wagons on the layout. Here they are all going over the viaduct behind the Graham Farish Ginty. And here they are going through the back of Colville Station. This train is made up entirely of the new wagons with just the Loco and an LMS brake van added. Here they are going round by Bilston Holt and the farm. I have to say that initially I was very disappointed in these wagons. I'd expected that as higher-end collector's items they would be good quality and would run well. But though they are certainly very nicely finished in terms of appearance, they did not meet the expectation with respect to good running. They were very light. On the plus side, this meant that the Farish Ginty, which is not a terrific puller, could manage to get up a steep gradient pulling all of them, as seen here. But on the minus side, it meant that they didn't hold the rails at all well and were very prone to derailing. On points or curves, pretty much anything other than a perfectly straight and level track was prone to fetch these wagons off the rails. This situation was not helped by the fact that some of them had chassis details modelled very low down close to the track, giving minimum clearance, increasing the likelihood of fouling on the guide rails of points, etc. An additional problem was that some of the wagons, especially the 2 that were not open, the sand wagon and the flat tank, sat higher from the rails than standard wagons and so didn't engage their couplings well and were prone to becoming uncoupled in motion. The overall result was that it was almost impossible to run these wagons round the layout as a train without an incident of derailing or uncoupling. I was almost inclined at this point to write them off as unusable, but I decided that it should be possible to do something about these problems. I figured that the first step would be to add some weight to the wagons. I thought about various possible ways of doing this. Pico do it with their kits by putting a steel plate in the base. I came to the conclusion that here weighting would have to be combined with adding loads, other than for the closed wagons, where weight could just be put inside. First, I used a small funnel and a small spoon to add a quantity of lead shot to each wagon. And I did open up the closed wagons and put lead inside those also. Before going any further with the process, I checked out the running of the weighted wagons on the layout. No point in proceeding if the wagons didn't run better this way. Actually, at first they wouldn't run at all. The controller just kept tripping its safety. I feared this could be because the weight was too much for the Loco, but I experimented and found that the safety would trip even if there was no attempt to use a Loco. Checking with each wagon in turn, I found that it was the flat tank wagon that was tripping the safety. It was constructed with the metal wheels running in slots in the bottom of the internal, the base of the internal cavity, the bottom of the wagon inside the tank had slots in it to the wheels ran in, and the lead shot I'd put inside the cavity was touching the wheels in these slots and causing a short circuit across the rails. I put insulating tape over the top of the slots, and that solved that problem. With that problem solved, I found that the wagons did indeed run much better with the added weight, although they were now too heavy for the Ginty to pull up the gradient unaided. However, other stronger Locos could pull them up. Given that the weight seemed to be a good thing, I now went on to cover the lead shot with loads for the open wagons. I used Woodland's Scenic's coarse cinders for some, and mine-run coal for others. Here's more of a close-up of that loading. The finer, darker loads are the mine-run coal, with the cinders being coarser and slightly brownish. I did the loading in a tray like this to catch the spill. My intention was to fix these loads, as I certainly didn't want the shot coal and cinders spilling all over things if wagons tipped over. To fix the loads, I first put each wagon into the sink and sprayed the load with rubbing alcohol as a wetting solution. Then I used a pipette to drip scenic cement into the load. The alcohol made the cement run right down into the load. I left them all to dry overnight. The wagons ran pretty well after all this. The biggest remaining problem was this sand wagon. It really didn't want to couple reliably to anything. I swapped out its axles and wheels for standard Farish spares, as the original seemed to have particularly large flanges. Even that didn't help much. I finally resorted to trying to bend the couplings downward to force them to engage better with other wagons. That pretty much got things to go round, though the plastic may spring back and create the problem again. With the weighted loads, these became quite a heavy train, and most Locos would require a banker to get them up the gradient. Here there is actually a Royal Scot pulling the wagons, hardly appropriate, but still I wanted to try different Locos and see what they could do, and the banker here is a Fairburn tank, one of the few LMS locomotives that Graham Farish still actually sell. Here's that train finally making the top of the gradient. And here's that train pulling round over the yard, with the Fairburn banker just coming over the viaduct. A really strong pulling Loco could get the loaded wagons up the gradient unaided. Here's the Union Mills ex-Midland 3F tender Loco doing the job. I have two Union Mills Locos, this one and a G2 Super D, and they're both terrific pullers. Don't have traction tyres, it's just really because they're heavy locomotives. They're all metal with good strong motors, and they both of them pull a train extremely well, even though they may not be the most detailed models. And here's a close-up of that version of the train. And now for some running video. Okay, let's just see if we can see the Graham Farish wagons, Collectors Club wagons that I fixed up with the various loads and weight, going round the track and hopefully going up the gradient, pulled by the Union Mills Midland 3F here. Ex-Midland 3F, is it? So now he can actually pull those, although they're all quite heavy, he can pull all those up that gradient. The Union Mills Locos are really good pullers. A lot of other Locos, some Locos won't even get them up there double-headed, let alone on their own. I'm still pretty nervous about whether these will actually go round without coming uncoupled. That sand wagon, which is the last but one wagon in front of the brake there, is particularly prone to coming uncoupled. It just sits rather higher on the track than anything else, and getting its couplers to engage with other wagons is hard. Now the sound you're hearing here is the Secatur Sound Box again, but this is a Japanese, it's C12 C56 card rather than the US light steam, so it's a different chuff, although that echoing in the background is actually the US card. I just turned the US card off See how quiet the Japanese card is by comparison? The Japanese brake sound sucks. See, that's what the Japanese, they call a brake sound on the Japanese. It's kind of a vague grate rather than the nice squeal you get on. But see, the Japanese sound card makes almost no sound. That's the brake release sound, which is almost exactly the same as the brake release sound. But for some reason they don't seem to, instead of putting a nice brake squeal like they put on the US Light Steam, they put this weird, vague, hissing, grating sound on as the apply brake sound. Although the English on the card actually describes it as a squeal, but it clearly is not a squeal. Well, we got them round once anyway. As I say, the big problem, if anything goes wrong here, the most likely, well, various things can go wrong. The sandwagon could come uncoupled, or the other problem is that sometimes going over points, if you don't go over the points fairly slowly, some of those coke wagons can come derailed. But they certainly run a heck of a lot better now that I've got them weighted and loaded than they did when I first got them. When I first got them, trying to run them around empty, they were just hopeless. See, now that's the engine has got stuck. Oh, I think it's actually got derailed, has it? Yeah, see, we're having problems here. The tender of the engine, trying to re-rail it, which is not easy. Go away, because the weight is bringing the wagons down onto the back of it while I'm trying to do it. The problem is that crossover. It's a bit of a pain. Trying to get the engine for this the tender for this little engine. I can't get it back on properly. I need to use a re-railer. Same as last one, even then I'm having trouble doing it. There. Now try. Well, the problem was, it's the tender for the engine derailed going over that double crossover. That double crossover is a tricky piece of kit. It's got lots, you can see it's got lots of little frogs and things there, and guide rails and whatever, and they tend to derail picky things a bit. We probably should have perhaps slightly more enthusiastic chuffing. I'm listening to the sound of those wagons, trying to decide if they're all on the rails properly. They're a bit noisy, but I don't know whether that means that anything's derailed. It may just be because that viaduct again is a bit on the noisy side. Try one more time, see if we can get over the crossover without derailing. We got over it once without derailing, but it's not like it derails things every time, but it's a tricky piece of kit. Nope, did it again. It did it again. It did it again. It derailed going over the crossover. See, that's totally, the engine's not derailed, but the tender there is totally derailed. I don't know. I know. See, I'm not sure that I've got it properly railed now. It just doesn't seem to be possible to get that tender. I don't seem to be able to get that tender to go over that crossover without derailing. Just checking the bottom of the tender there. Just flipping the crossover backwards and forwards. No, I don't know, it just won't do it, will it? It just gets there and hit, I don't know. Nope, it just will not, that tender just will not go over that. Oh, do go away. It's very annoying that the wagons won't stay out the way because of the weight keeps bringing them forward. No, I can't get the wagons to stay out the way. Cannot get the wagons to stay out the way, and that tender just derails every time it goes over the blithering crossover. Oh well then, now there's a wagon derailed. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's more the wagon that's the problem than the tender. Nope, now the engine's derailing. It's a real pain, this crossover. Well, so far the wagons have been working fairly well, but we've been really struggling to get anything to pass over that crossover. Bring them out the tunnel there, and just bring it to a stop there for a moment. Just see if we can run a track cleaner over here a bit. It is a very bumpy, complicated piece of kit, this double crossover. well, in as much as it goes, I think everything's set there, so what can you do? Oh, I think we just managed to sneak across it this time now without derailing. There you go. We did manage to get over it that time without anything derailing. I don't know whether that was because the track cleaner helped or what. Anyway, despite struggles with the double crossover, I am quite pleased with the way these wagons have gone now, because when I first got them, I almost consigned them to being useless. I just could not get the blithering things to run at all sensibly empty the way they came. But they've now got lead in the bottom of them, and then various loads over the top of the lead, and they are quite runnable wagons now, and quite nice looking wagons. We'll try one more time, see if we get over this crossover again, if we actually solved the problem with this crossover, or were we just lucky last time? Oh yeah, I guess we were just lucky. I guess we were just lucky last time. It's decided to go again. I don't know. It's very annoying. It really hates going over this crossover, doesn't it? This engine, or more specifically its tender, just hates to go over this crossover. I don't know. It's very, very difficult, yes, to get that engine for some reason to go over that crossover without its tender derailing. You can do it occasionally. I did it again there after on the final attempt, but it sadly is rather prone to derailing. There. I don't know if she'll do any better if we go around the other. We can also go around the other way. I just put the points over so we won't go round by the double crossover. And, well, I was fiddling with that coupling, trying to get him around the crossover, and I guess I never got him really coupled up again properly. I think the culprit, it may well be the culprit is that wagon behind the tender really, rather than the tender itself. That it's having troubles, and that's causing troubles for the... I don't know, now I can't get the blithering thing to hook to the tender at all. I don't know. It would not surprise me if it may, that wagon may be a part of the... Oh, and it's doing it again. It just won't go up that hill. Well, I mean, it'll go up the hill, but it won't. It keeps uncoupling. Going to couple any better. Who knows? I just changed the order of the front two wagons in the hope that that might produce a better coupled train. There's quite a bit of strain there because they're quite heavy and we're pulling them up a steep gradient. And the viaduct there was always rough. I actually worked on the rails a bit with a file there with the viaduct because it kept bumping things so much. Now we're going to turn on this point, which is going to be a problem. See, we're pulling all the wagons across a point there where they're turning, which is another potential for derailing. And of course, as in real life, trains are supposed to slow down when they go across points, because it's always in real life, if you go across points too fast, there's a danger that you'll derail. That's why they have speed limits over points. Slower speed limits over some points than others. Well, there you go. Anyway, we got him round a few times there. And you certainly got to look at the wagons running there.